Good afternoon to everybody, and a very warm welcome to you from live here in Vogan Weather HQ, Edmonton, just north of Inverness. The sun is shining, the breeze is, well, it's trying to pick up, but it seems to be rather quiet at the moment. It has been a fairly decent day, despite the fact that we've got a rapidly deepening area of low pressure just to the west of the UK and Ireland at the moment. It is blowing a hoolie on the west coast of Ireland, and those winds are slowly transferring eastwards. But a very good afternoon anyway, and welcome to the 113th edition of the Global Weather and Climate Report live. And I hope you're all having a wonderful Sunday afternoon so far. We've got Paul James and Mark Kinnish, definitely not that random guy, also tuning in. So good afternoon to you folks. Hope you're having a great afternoon, like I've already said. What is the weather conditions like where you are? Where are you watching from? And also, what is your weather conditions like this afternoon? So we'll build up, as usual, we'll build up the numbers here, and then we'll look at the content that is going to be available on the channel this afternoon. So yeah, like I said, the sun is shining. I'm sitting in the conservatory here. You can see blue sky. And there's pretty much a light breeze blowing at the moment. And even with the frontal system moving through, associated with that deepening area of low pressure that's been rapidly deepening actually to the west, the frontal system didn't really do an awful lot apart from drop just over 3 millimeters of rain here. So yeah, I kind of thought there might have been a little bit more than there has been so far. But anyway, let me know how you're getting on this afternoon, what you're up to. Are you having Sunday dinner, preparing in the oven? We're going to be having a roast chicken dinner this evening. Looking forward to that. So we've got Paul Farwell, Hazel Kitching, Wayne Bingham, and our good friend Paul James moderating this afternoon. As always, a very massive thank you to Paul for not only tuning in, but also helping out with the moderating. I know Lindsay will be tuning in shortly. She is currently preparing the dinner for this evening. We've also got Shane Anderson tuning in as well. A very good afternoon to you, Shane. So let's go through and see what folks are saying. So Paul says, afternoon from a damp Hampshire. So yeah, damp down on the south coast. Also Mark Kinnish says, hi Mark, a question to ask. The man of many questions are Mark Kinnish. A question to ask. When you said about central-based La Nina, you said about it can be bad sign for cold lovers. I take it that doesn't mean no cold weather at all this winter. Mark, we're still building the ideas, my friend. So let's not take things just quite too literal. Obviously, there's various parameters to look at. ENSO, MJO, etc., etc. I've given my ideas. Do check out the video that was released back on Friday. Half an hour long, a little bit long-winded, but trying to explain a couple of things with regards. We cannot focus too much on just one thing. It's many different aspects that needs to get taken into consideration. I do think we're going to have a bit of a back and forth winter. There is aspects going on within the stratosphere that we will touch on briefly in today's live stream with regards to the disconnect between the stratosphere, the upper levels of the stratosphere versus the lower levels of the stratosphere. The prospects going into the month of November, it looks as if we could have some interesting things with blocking within the high latitudes returning, possibly delivering some fairly decent cold spells as well. So we'll talk a little bit about winter, but I want to speak a little bit more about the global picture today, what's going on, but also Storm Ashley. You can see here, this is the current wind speeds in kilometres per hour, showing that we are starting to pick things up, especially across Ireland and Northern Ireland, but we're also starting to see the winds pick up across mainland UK as well, from south coast to north coast. But we also have, so Paul James, finally we can see some blue sky to my northwest after a cloudy day, says Paul. Shane says, hey Mark, Storm Ashley doing the rounds on the west coast of Ireland. It certainly appears that way. Shane, where are you tuning in from? Are you on the west coast of Ireland or are you elsewhere? My friend, it would be interesting to hear. Stephen Robert Gill also tuning in. A very good afternoon to you, Stephen. been way more windy and much cooler than expected down here in Portsmouth. Again, we're at the point of the year where above average temperatures doesn't equate to particularly warm. That's certainly true, Stephen. We're obviously into the back half of October now. Mild doesn't constitute warm. We're getting to that stage now where a mild day could be 10 Celsius or 12 Celsius. We obviously know that the averages are now starting to come down. So Shane says lots of power outages being reported across Ireland. That's quite interesting, actually. It's incredible because you think you're kind of almost sitting here in the north of Scotland and going, do you know what? This has been a bust. There's not really anything happening, but it's easy to think that way in your one particular location. It's looking at the big picture and saying to yourself, what's it doing elsewhere? And we know we can see 100 plus kilometre per hour winds now over the western side of Ireland here as we speak. This is live information coming in from Meteosale. We've got Jay. Thank you for tuning in, Jay. Speaking in Spanish, so unfortunately I don't understand what you're saying. It would be great to get a translation on that. So Paul says, hi, Hazel Kitching. All okay here. Thank you. How are you? David Vogan tuning in from Kirkintilloch this afternoon. Good afternoon to you, David and Joyce, my mum and dad. Hope you're having a fine afternoon. What is the weather conditions like down in Turkey? I'd be interested to know. Well, David says winds picked up here in Kirkintilloch about. So I don't know if he's released that comment without finishing what he was going to say. But certainly, yeah, we are starting to see the winds picking up. You can see 75 kilometres per hour in the Glasgow area. So you're talking kind of Persian gale force winds now, 80 kilometres in the kind of southern uplands. Then we've got kind of 70 to 90 kilometres an hour on the west coast of Cumbria. And even across further east now, we're starting to see those strong winds transfer over the Pennines into the eastern half of England. So we've got Lindsay also now tuning in. Good afternoon to you, Lindsay, even though you're in the other room. So hope the dinner's on. But anyway, so Lindsay said, hi everyone, sorry I'm late, was putting Mr. Vogan's dinner on, and quite rightly so. Mark kind of says, hi Paul, I'll make you laugh, blah blah blah. David says, oops, pressed send prematurely about 2:30 p.m. Although windy, it was dry and bright, but raining heavily now. Paul Miller also tuning in. Hi all, hope you are well. We've got Shane saying, no, on the train back to Limerick City. Lots of trains, including this one, has been delayed about at least 30 minutes. Certainly hope your train journey goes relatively smoothly, Shane, and safe travels to you, my friend. We've got, who else have we got here now? Mark says 16 here in the Wirral, very blowy. And Mark sent me an interesting photograph there during the week of the flooding. I believe it was in his street in the Wirral, showing quite a substantial amount of flooding actually. And, this month appears to be a reasonably wet one as well. Up here across the north, we've really not had an awful lot of rain over recent months. A lot of the focus of the heavy rain has been more down across, really even from the central belt, but especially the bulk of England and Wales, and then Ireland and Northern Ireland has had its fair share of rainfall as well. David says leaves flying off the trees. Funny enough, actually, when I was doing the dishes there just an hour or so ago, I happened to look out and there was just a sea of leaves in the air. It was kind of funny to see because you kind of get startled thinking, what the heck's that in the air? But it's just the leaves getting whipped off the trees now. It's amazing how different the foliage has actually become in the last week or so. Actually, you get the leaves now slowly but surely changing. We're starting to lose it, and then you get a few autumn gales now developing, and obviously you very quickly start to see things more that you didn't see during the summertime because of the thick foliage. It's the same with the garden here. We've got 2 trees. We've got quite a lot of bushes. There's a park to the back of the house. And during the summertime, you literally don't see it that much because of all the thick foliage. Now it's amazing how much the views start to become more expansive. And you actually forget what it looks like between, summer and winter. So, I'm waffling on a load of rubbish probably, but I'm sure people can concur with what I'm talking about. The difference in the foliage and how much more you see when the leaves come off the trees. So November looking cold, maybe Mark says, Paul. Yeah, it's looking that way. I mean, there's no guarantees yet. I noticed one person saying about hyping the cold up, and that's not the case. It's easy when you're a cold lover like myself to become enthusiastic about something, but hype would be something when you're almost pushing something that isn't necessarily based on anything. You only have to look at the newspapers and see ridiculous articles, ridiculous headlines that are purely for clickbait and to get clicks. But generally speaking, a lot of the stuff that I'm forecasting going down the road has got scientific explanation behind it. It's got reason. There's a reason behind what I'm forecasting. It's not just a case I'm going to say, oh, it's going to be a cold November. It's going to be this or it's going to be that. It's based on scientific evidence to support the ideas that I'm putting out there. But certainly it looks as if we're going to start to see this mild pattern start to kind of slowly. It's going to take a wee while, but we will start to see higher pressure, I think, building in over the next week to 10 days as the Mann-Julian oscillation continues to push towards the Central Pacific. And it looks as if it's going to be quite an amplified MJO phase 7 and 8. So therefore, we should start to see the influences taking place up into the mid to high latitude pattern. And we're starting to see the evidence now supporting the models in a more blocky and potentially cold period coming up. I'm not necessarily buying into the idea that we're going to have a full-fledged, cold November, full stop. I think there might be variability in it. But there's definitely good reason to believe that we're going to see the Greenland block redevelop over Greenland. We're going to start to see trophiness develop over eastern North America and western portions of Europe. And quite often when you have mild, wet, windy spells, they can quite often be followed by cold spells. So we'll wait and see what happens anyway going forward. The idea is if you've checked out the article on marthaandweather.com, if you checked out the video that I put out back a couple of days ago explaining more about the fact that I think that we have a front-loaded winter. I think we're going to have a cold spell during November. I think we have the potential to have quite a substantial cold period in December. Like I say, it's not me saying a cold November, cold December. It takes a lot for it to be sustained cold. It might be a bit of back and forth. And then the stratosphere, that's going to be another whole different story altogether. What happens? Do we see it strengthening and staying strong, or do we continue to see this weakness back and forward? That's going to be the question. If it strengthens and stays strong, I would say that we're leaning towards milder. But there's a lot of funky things going on. We've got solar maximum. We've got higher than normal levels of ozone within the stratosphere. That tends to have a warming influence. And therefore, the warming influence, the weaker polar vortex, it's easier for outside weather systems and situations to then interfere with what's going on within the pole. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is the forcing that we're seeing at the moment within the tropics has a greater influence on the polar vortex when it's weak. When the polar vortex is strong, it tends to override other things like the MJO. Remember back to last winter, MJO was a great indicator for both mild spells and cold spells, November and the month of December. Then as the MJO rotated into the maritime continent, it warmed up. We've seen a mild pattern develop across the majority of the northern hemisphere. But once the El Nino really took hold, it grabbed a hold, that really warm water within the east and central Pacific. Once that locked into the atmosphere above, basically the MJO and other factors thrown out the window, it ruled the roost and it was dominant, the El Nino. And we had a very mild February, obviously. We all remember that pretty well. So yeah, there's a lot of complicating things going on at the moment. Not one aspect drives the whole thing unless you've got an overwhelming El Nino or La Nina. But we don't have that. We've got a weak borderline moderate, neutral to weak La Nina looks to be the case as we move through the next couple of months here. So we'll watch this going forward at least anyway. So we've got Joyce also tuning in. Joyce says, "Hi Mark, raining here and quite blustery, but all well, thanks." Mum says Joyce. So I hope you're enjoying your afternoon. Hope you're feeling well today. We've got who have we else got? Mark kind of says that that's true. Mark, my Daily Express say cool winter every year. 1 year they'll be right, though. Fact one comes in end, but that's just the way it goes. Yeah, ups and downs, Mark. That's probably the best way to put it, my friend. We are in a warmer world than we were 10, 15, 20 years ago, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we can't get cold and snow here in the UK. Obviously, the further south you go, the harder it has been in recent years to get decent snow. Probably the Beast from the East in 2018 was the last time we had a decent snow across many areas of the UK, going from the south coast all the way up to the north coast. Big drifts where I was, Cumbernauld to Kirkintilloch, only a 15-minute drive. Took me 3 hours. I think it was three and a half hours to get back that one night. Wind chills into the minus 10s below freezing, air temperature -6, factoring in a near gale force easterly wind. That was some night, I must admit, and it'll always be in my memory. So anyway, this is the current wind speeds in kilometres per hour across the UK and Ireland at the moment. Let's have a quick look at the pressure chart. We will look at the global picture. We are going to look at France, northern Spain, and also Italy. We've seen some incredible flooding once again impact these areas of Europe. So these are the current pressure. This is the current pressure chart for the UK and Ireland. There's Storm Ashley's centre. Now, last night we had 2 areas of low pressure. What's happened over the last 24, 36 hours? It developed over the central Atlantic as a rather innocuous feature. What's happened is it's crossed from the warm side into the cold side of the jet, and it's really, really strengthened. 2 areas of low pressure kind of dancing around one another, and then it's absorbed one another and become one main low. So all the concentration of the energy is now bundled into this one tightly wound area of low pressure. You can see it well offshore at the moment, but it is in a weakening phase. I don't know how low the pressure dropped. The models kind of suggested 948, 947 millibars at its peak. So let's kind of skip back. It looks as if the pressure, let me just see here real quick. So obviously as these lines of equal pressure are tightening, that is the wind's going to be strengthening here. We've got a pretty tight gradient actually, 950s in millibars to the west-northwest of the UK. We've still got over 1,000 millibars in the southern UK. So we've got a current pressure around 957 millibars off the west coast of Scotland, northwest of Ireland, Donegal. I would expect severe gales, damaging winds up the western side of Ireland, up towards Donegal, up towards Antrim. We're now going to start to see the strongest winds transfer into the northern UK, probably once we see the sunset tonight. That is when the worst of the winds are going to be. We had the frontal system move through during the course of this morning. That is now well out over the North Sea. And now we're going to see the core of strongest winds associated with the southern flank of this centre. So obviously this is the centre here. It's quite obvious to see, obviously. But you've got the strongest winds on the southern flank. This is where the damaging winds are contained. But obviously, unlike a tropical system, the wind field is quite broad. And you can get gale force winds, a long way from the centre. But the core of strongest winds is generally on the southern and southeastern side of low pressure systems. But this is now going to start to gradually unravel. We're going to start to see the pressure within the centre rising, but it doesn't mean that we're not going to see 70, 80 mile per hour winds as the system crosses the northern side of the UK here. So I would expect to see up here very little in the way of wind at the moment, but I would expect to see the winds really strengthen as we go through the next several hours, say the next 6 to even 12 hours, maybe not 12 hours so much, but yeah, we are going to see winds increase as we go through the next several hours. Let's have a look at the current temperatures, and we can see that it's reasonably mild across the board. So yeah, again, as we now progress into the second half of October, the mild is considered mild at 13, 14 Celsius. You've got 15s up in the north coast of, on the Murray Coast, for example, between Inverness and Kinloss Air Force Base. Down in the central belt, we've got 15s and 16s. Down towards the south coast, we've got 17s. Looks as if we've got an 18 here actually. So we've got an 18 degrees here at Exeter. Across to Ireland and Northern Ireland, we've got 10s and 11s. So relatively mild across the majority of the UK at this moment in time. So anyway, let's crack on. Let's have a look and see what the current look is with regards to the tropics. We did have 2 tropical storms. I believe one has developed into a hurricane. We've had actually Oscar become a hurricane. We've got Nadine now. It's the remnants of Nadine now moving across Central America here. Moved in right close to the Belize and Mexico border. Oscar looks as if it's moving towards the eastern side of Cuba. That will be. And let's see where the forecast track is projecting Oscar to go. So, yeah, the forecast remains the same as I talked about in yesterday's tropical outlook, that it looks as if it's going to come ashore on the far eastern side of Cuba as a hurricane. Currently, winds are 80 miles per hour, and then take a hard northward turn, if you notice here, and then clip the eastern side of the Bahamas as a tropical storm. The biggest threat from this, obviously, we're talking about some fairly gusty winds, damaging winds on the east coast of Cuba here, but it's going to be a bigger rainmaker, especially for areas such as the East Bahamas. So this is the rain projections of NHC. You can see here an orangey colour representing what that looks like, 8 to 12 inches of rain falling in the mountains of far eastern Cuba. Then that tongue of 6 to 8 inches then extends up into the eastern portion of the island chain, the archipelago of the Bahamas. And then Nadine is going to dissipate. However, that being said about Nadine, it looks as if it's going to move into the East Pacific and possibly change over to another system. Is the NHC locking in on that idea? I'm not sure. No, it looks as if it's going to dissipate. But it may regain a name in the East Pacific. I could be wrong. I forget the exact parameters that they work on with systems moving from one basin to another. But it looks as if Nadine is going to dissipate, but the remnant energy is going to then move into the East Pacific and possibly redevelop. We've also got Katrine tuning in as well. Good evening or good afternoon to you, Katrine. We've also got SJM tuning in. Hope you're well. We've got Jace72 as well. Good afternoon to you, Jace. I think you've been on for a while, my friend, but I've not given you a shout out, so it's better late than never with the shout outs. Katrine saying good evening, Mr. Vogan, Mark Vogan, David Vogan, and Lindsay Vogan. So all the Vogans are on, including Joyce Vogan. So it's a full team of Vogans that are tuning in this afternoon to the live stream. We've got 38 to 40 concurrent viewers at the moment. As per usual, you know the drill. Hit that like button, and if you haven't already done so and you're a lover of all things weather, please hit that subscribe button. As 7 days a week content here in the channel. I work full time, do night shift, driving a lorry between Inverness and Glasgow, but there is 7 days a week content here on my YouTube channel. So there's a lot of hard work getting put into it at the moment, and I would encourage you to stick around, and we will see how Ashley behaves over the next 12 hours or so. It will eventually move out into the near continent, and it will be no longer. But how much of an impact does this system have on the UK? That's going to be the question. It's going to be interesting to see how much damage perhaps is caused. This is a look at the global tropics, by the way. So we've got Oscar just to the north of Hispaniola, just to the east northeast of Cuba, we've got an invest area here. This is probably, I don't know if this is associated with Nadine, the remnants of Nadine over Central America here raining itself out. We've got an invest area over the southern Indian Ocean. We've also got a tropical depression 22 over the far West Pacific. Now, the MJO is quite active over the West Pacific, so I would expect to see more tropical systems developing in the West Pacific over the next 7 days or so. So we'll keep an eye on that here on the channel. So let's crack on and look at the big global picture then. How is this, the temperature anomalies looking around the planet for the month of October so far? We'll have a look at that. We'll also look and see what the pattern is going to do in the upcoming 7 days. So this is the temperature anomalies from a global perspective for the month of October so far. So we're obviously sitting now on the 20th of October. It is frightening how fast this month is going. This year's going really. It really is pretty scary actually how fast the time is going. But yeah, this is the current temperature anomalies around the world. If you're watching the TV, you will have a better view of this. If you're watching on your mobile device or a mobile device, it might be harder to see. So I do apologize for that. But you can see that North America is largely warmer than average for the month. Got a little bit of cooler than average across Alaska. The eastern side of the United States is also quite cool. We've seen some record cold. In fact, let's have a quick look at these. I'm jumping back and forth as I always do, and I apologize for that. But this is the global records for the current period, which is quite interesting to see here. This is off coolweather.com or coolwx.com. And you can see here the blue dots representing cold or near record cold. So we've actually got that up across the far northwest of North America here. Some near or daily record lows being broken here up along the Alaska region here of North America. Even down across the southwest in the Modesto, we're seeing some near daily record lows being achieved. Fullerton, California. I believe it was Paul James that lived in California for a short period of time. So it looks as if we've got some chillier numbers as a trough digs into this southwestern portion of the United States. Then we're talking about some record warmth in parts of the Caribbean at the moment here. Temperatures into the kind of 32, 33 Celsius range at the moment. So yeah, interesting considering we've got a tropical system, a hurricane to be exact, just to the north. But in the last few hours, we've seen some record warm temperatures, even on the north coast of Brazil here. We're talking about French Guiana, actually, sorry, a record temperature of 33. Then we move across the Atlantic to Morocco. We've seen a temperature of 32 Celsius on the Atlantic coast of Morocco. Then look at this around the UK here, some record warmth to speak about. We've got a few on the Arabian Peninsula, then down around the equatorial portions of Africa. We've got in Gabon, we've got 32 Celsius. We've also got 29 Celsius. These are near daily record temperatures. We've also seen some impressive contrast over Japan. We'll look at that in just a second here. But this is Kurashio, I can't pronounce it, airport in Japan. A temperature of 1 Celsius, so that's a record low temperature. In fact, Tokyo had its latest 30 Celsius of the year recorded at the same time that we had heavy snowfall and gale force winds in Hokkaido, which is the island to the north of Honshu. Honshu is the main island in Japan. Then you've got Hokkaido in the north. So there was snow, near blizzard conditions in Hokkaido, while down on Honshu we had Tokyo record its latest 30 Celsius on record. So let's look specifically at the United States. So these are the near daily record low temperatures in parts of California, one in Arizona as well. Then look at Europe at the moment. So this is quite interesting. Let's have a look and see what it's showing. So temperatures of 16 Celsius, a near daily record high for Edinburgh Airport. We've also got Glasgow, 15 Celsius, a near daily record high. Up in Lewis, up in Stornoway, temperature of 14 Celsius, so a near daily record here. This is an interesting one, near daily record high in Yeovilton, 17. So quite a few areas seeing near daily record highs, even up on the north coast of France. We're seeing some warm temperatures also. What's this here showing? Cannes on the south coast of France, the French Riviera, breaking a daily record of 26 Celsius. So we've got some warm temperatures here. Up into Scandinavia, some very warm conditions. Sweden, for example, 17. There's Malmö, 16 Celsius. So quite a lot of mild temperatures at the moment, indicative of that strong positive NEO. At the moment, we're seeing warmer temperatures moving into the eastern United States after a period of cold. So we continue to see warmer than average temperatures replacing the Arctic conditions that we've seen back about a week or so ago. So that is off coolweather.com. So taking a little tour around the world, we've still got incredible warmth across pretty much the majority of South America at the moment. The majority of North America also, with the exceptions of the northwest and southeast. Equatorial Africa, where we've got the thunderstorm activity below average. South Africa as well, we're seeing below average temperatures. Up across the north, warmer than average. Most of Australia is warmer than average, including New Zealand. A large swathe of China, with the exceptions of the southwest. India is largely warmer than average, although we've seen quite a lot of thunderstorms and flooding across parts of India in recent times. Then moving into Central Asia, so all the stands seeing largely warmer than average, with the exceptions of Kazakhstan. Up in the southern portions of Siberia, we're seeing colder than average conditions here. We've seen temperatures into the minus 30s, by the way. Obviously, we're extending the snow cover over Siberia. We've got a 10-year high in terms of Siberian or Eurasian snow cover extent. It's the highest amounts from mid-October since all the way back to 2014 here. What significance that has going down the road remains very much to be seen. But some cool anomalies here showing up for the month. This is obviously the whole month of October. So through the last 20 days, that area here across southern Russia has been colder than average, which is pretty interesting to see. Let's look at Europe. And we're still holding on to a slight anomaly actually across the UK and Ireland. That's interesting. I thought maybe that we would have started to see that cool anomaly changing over to a warmer anomaly. I actually did think that, but we're holding on to that cool anomaly a little bit longer than I thought. So interesting stuff. Looking back at the last 90 days or so, and you can see here, this is how Europe is looking. So average to slightly below average for the last 90 days across the UK. The majority of Europe is warmer than average. Then if we look at the bigger picture, the global picture for the last 90 days, look at North America, look at South America, firmly warmer than average. We remain in this very warm mode on a global perspective. Sea surface temperatures about as warm as you possibly can get. And that has to get very much looked into in terms of the winter forecast and ideas. The fact that the global sea surface temperatures are really, you go back the last 1 to 5 years, that period of record, you go back further than that and you can't really compare, because you go back into the early 2010s, the 2000s, 90s and the 80s, and the sea surface temperature anomalies changed dramatically. And therefore, what can be difficult is all these teleconnections that we've always looked at, the North Pacific, the PDO, the AMO, the MJO, these used to behave differently back when the global SSTs were much cooler. We had different, it's harder to distinguish now between one area and one ocean to another, because it's all largely uniformly warmer than normal. So again, it kind of thwarts the influence on the atmosphere. Does that make sense? I hope it does. And that's what's making, sometimes in a sense, long-range forecasting harder, because warm water, cool water has different influences in the ocean and the atmosphere. But if you've got it all warmer than average, it can be harder to then make a call, I suppose. So anyway, I'm continuing to waffle on. Sync Splint is also tuned in. A very good afternoon to you, Sync. Hope you're having a good afternoon, and thanks for your moderating as well. It is greatly appreciated. A massive thank you to Paul, Lindsay and Sink Splint for their moderating. So yeah, let's crack on. Flooding in parts of France. We have seen unbelievable scenes on our TV in recent times. Upwards of 850 millimetres of rainfall within a 48-hour period in the mountains of southeastern France. That is a year's worth of rain in Paris, fallen inside the space of 2 days. And I think a lot of it is to do with the fuel left over from the summertime, that warm water built up within the Mediterranean, also the Atlantic as well. Once you start to drive cooler air masses and systems into that warmer, more humid, more fuel type environment, you're going to release more water. Obviously, a warmer world holds more moisture, and therefore we see the rains coming down all the harder. We've seen a tremendous rainfall distribution, especially during the second half of the summer season. And I think these heavy rainfall events, by the way, are going to linger on into the winter season this year with that very warm Mediterranean basin. Any systems coming in, we're going to see spin-ups, we're going to see medicanes. That's like those little Mediterranean-type hurricanes that you see. They're almost warm core. They kind of almost slightly develop a bit of a warm core center. You don't get an actual hurricane or a tropical cyclone in the Mediterranean, but it's about as close as you can get. Sometimes these systems develop warm cores, but they dump a tremendous amount of rain. We've seen that going from France, northern Spain. That's now moved into Italy. We're seeing, that roadway crossing over, somewhere in Italy anyway, and it was actually the water was pouring off the roadway, and it looked like a waterfall. I don't know if anybody's seen that. It was pretty incredible to look at. So actually, let's have a quick look at Volcanic, because their tweets are always rather interesting when it comes to flooding. Disaster news and Volcanic is something that I quite often look at. So this is the scene here in parts of Italy. Look at this here. So this is unfortunately an ongoing scene in many parts of Europe at the moment here. Very sad, very devastating scenes. I don't know if anybody has experienced a flooded home or water damage, but it must be a very devastating thing to experience. I'm fortunate enough to have never experienced that, but my heart goes out to anybody that has experienced water damage and flooding of any significance. But yeah, many scenes. This is the Bologna area of Italy, and you can see here the incredible scenes. And this, like I say, this is all too familiar, which is sad to say. But yeah, look at that there. These are roadways, not rivers, and it's just simply a system moving in to a very warm environment. We've obviously seen record-breaking flooding. We've seen record-breaking heat right the way through the summertime, and this is the result when you start to see cooler air, more autumnal air moving into this area. It comes at a cost, and that cost is flooding. But I'm trying to see here if we can see any other interesting videos. But crazy scenes coming out of Bologna over the last 24 hours in Italy. And this is part of the same system that brought the 850 plus millimetres of rain to parts of France in the last wee while or so here. So continuing on, we're starting to lose the sun. Wind's still not really that picked up, which is interesting. I'm expecting it to really pick up into this evening here up in the north of the UK. This was the scene in Belize. So this is the effects of the tropical storm Nadine moving into Central America. So this is Belize, close to the Yucatan-Mexico border, and obviously you've got some pretty strong winds blowing, heavy rainfall obviously as a result as well. No surprise. Let's skip on here and see if there's anything else. There was actually an atmospheric river, so jet stream and strong storm system moving across the open Pacific and then ramming into the west coast of North America, and this was the result of that. They're known as atmospheric rivers because they actually come out of the subtropics and tropics, contain a lot of moisture, run in the jet stream, and then as a result you get some tremendous amounts of water dumped into British Columbia. So this is Burnaby in British Columbia, Canada in the last 24 hours or so here. So let me see here what else is going on around the world at the moment here. We'll look at Thierry Goose's Twitter feed because he talks about records, flooding, and other interesting aspects here to look at. So let me just see what he's saying. So we've had over the last 24 hours or so in British Columbia, due to that atmospheric river, we've had 241 millimetres of rainfall. And I think that's within a 24-hour period. I could be wrong. And this is obviously the result of that atmospheric river. Moisture running up the mountains obviously increase the moisture as the air mass cools and condenses and actually squeezes out more moisture through what is known as orographic lift. And that is the case anywhere. We see that in the western side of the UK as moisture moves into the mountains, tends to bring more rainfall than what you would see in lower elevations. Starting to rain here as I speak. So is the weather starting to get worse? It'll be interesting to see. So anyway, let's continue to crack on, see what our friend Thierry is saying. So this is what I was talking about with regards to Tokyo. So the latest 30 degrees Celsius recorded in Tokyo on record. Records in Tokyo date back to 1875, but we also seen heavy snowfall fall in northern portions of Japan. If we look at Sayaka Mori's, she's a meteorologist based in Japan. Does she have anything with regards to the snow? I meant to actually retweet that from earlier. I'm kind of waffling on as I'm actually talking here. Sorry about that. But let's crack on and see what else is happening with regards to rainfall. So this is 48-hour rainfall totals in France, 866.1 millimetres of rain. That is an unbelievable amount of rain falling within just a 2-day period. Actually, when I first seen these numbers, I thought, is that correct? Is that real? Because it just doesn't sound right, especially for France. You'd expect to see in India or Southeast Asia where they're used to seeing monsoon rainfall, but it must have been like a monsoon. Look at this here, minus 33 at Verkhoyansk in far eastern Russia on October 17th. So we are building the snowpack. We are seeing the cold increase over northern portions of the planet. Lowest temperature at that station for so early in the month since 1989. So the record in 1989 was 33.4 below freezing. So we are building the cold over the north. And it'll be interesting to see what we see later this month and into the month of November here. Some record heat across Southeast Asia. We're seeing 37 degrees in Borneo. And also that is broke a record. September 20th broke the September national record for Malaysia. So I'm forgetting actually that Borneo's actually got Malaysia on the north side and Indonesia on the south side. But we've seen temperatures 37.1 on the north side of the island of Borneo, and that is a new national September record here. We also seen temperatures as high as 36 in Brunei, and that's a national record for the month of October, which is quite interesting here. So continuing to see lots of record heat, especially down in the tropics. And yeah, let me see here. Let me see if we can bring up the current snow cover across the northern hemisphere. Current snow cover. Is it going to bring it up for me quickly? That is the question. So this is the current snow cover across the northern hemisphere at the moment. Still a little bit of a lack of snow cover across the north of North America here. We're getting a little bit more into the western United States as cooler air and the system moves into the west. But look at here, central and eastern portions of Russia. So obviously Russia's upside down here. You're looking at North America, Greenland, Iceland. This is the UK. Also seen an outstanding cold, by the way, in Iceland several days ago. Temperatures down to minus 18 Celsius, which is unusually cold for only the month of October. Still a lack of snow cover over Scandinavia, but I would expect to see that changing as we go through the next few weeks as the weather pattern changes. So anyway, let's have a look and see what the weather pattern is looking like for the next week or so, and then we'll kind of start to round things up. We're sitting on 45 minutes with 44 concurrent viewers at the moment. Have you hit the like button yet? Let myself and YouTube know that you're enjoying the content. Have you hit the subscribe button, more importantly, so you don't miss a future video? Because we're going to be looking at the prospects going through the remainder of October and in the month of November with regards to the weather pattern, and see what's happening. There is going to be some significant changes taking place as we go through the next wee while or so. So let's look at the weeklies, and let's look at Europe specifically and see what it's showing. So this is the upcoming 7-day period. Strong block and high pressure over much of Europe. We've got a strong low up towards Iceland here. That is a textbook classic positive North Atlantic oscillation pattern. It is a mild pattern. So what changes? We've obviously talked about the MJO changing and moving eastwards here. This is week 2. So this is the period between the 27th of October, 3rd of November. We've got a strong ridge seen by the CFS V2 to the southwest of the UK and Ireland. Notice it's starting to change, not starting back west. Then into week 3, this is 3rd through the 10th of November. Remember, this model tends to be a little bit biased warm, but you notice here that the blocking is now starting to develop up across northern areas. This would be a concern for southern Europe with all that residual warmth within the Mediterranean. With higher pressure to the north, you tend to find lower pressure congregates over southern Europe, over that warm water, and you could increase the risk of flash flooding down across the Mediterranean. And then again, interestingly here, this is going against a little bit of what I'm saying. 10th of November through the 17th, it's showing higher pressure over the majority of Europe. That is not necessarily a cold look. Then in the following week, 17th, we're going way out in the fantasy land, obviously. 17th of November through the 24th, we've got higher pressure again dominating. But if we look at the GFS ensemble and see what it's showing here, this is the upcoming 5 days. So again, similar to the CFS V2, strong ridging across the majority of Europe, negative up towards Iceland here. But let's play through this loop and see what it's showing here. So it's notice here that it's having the higher pressure backing towards the west of the UK and Ireland. That would promote more of a northwesterly flow over the top of that high into the UK and Ireland. So yeah, it'll be interesting to watch how this pattern evolves as we move into the month of November. But it's not necessarily showing anything particularly promoting of cold. I suppose that's the best way to look at it. In terms of rainfall, let's have a look and see what it's indicating here, because I'm sure many people are fed up of looking at rainfall. But this is the upcoming week. So actually a relatively dry looking week across the majority, with the exceptions of Western Scotland. Let's play through. It looks as if it's got a dry pattern, but I expect to see higher pressure building over the UK and Ireland over the next couple of weeks here. And that's a fairly dry signal as we move into the early portions of November. So that might be good news for many people who have seen flooding or just downright fed up looking at rain. Let's be honest, it has been very wet in recent months, with exceptions of August. But then northwestern Scotland had a record wet August, while the bulk of England and Wales got a bit of a break from all the heavy rainfall. We've got Inverness, Scotland also tuning in. Very good afternoon to you. My family, we're all from Skye. It's stunning. Live up north too. Certainly wasn't stunning, I must admit, back in August on Skye. But yes, Skye is a wonderful place. Beautiful scenery. I've been a few times now, and I must admit, I love Skye. Inverness, Scotland also says Tain, also lovely. I just love the Highlands. I certainly do, and that is why, well, that is one of the reasons why I chose to live up here in the first place. Apart from my beautiful wife, but also the fact that life is just different up here. I think got a wee bit less in the way of traffic. You've got a little bit less congestion. You're in the wild, so to speak. You've got beautiful scenery right in your doorstep. You really can't beat it at all. We've also got the Turbo Stream as well tuning in. A very good afternoon to you. It's been all rain since the start of September here. Yes, fed up of it now. And hopefully we'll get a bit of a break in terms of this horrible wet pattern that we've seen for seemingly forever now, actually. So yeah, we'll have a very quick look. We're going to actually check out the long range models, and then we will call it quits at that, I think, because I think it's that time now where folks are starting to get hungry and want to get about their business. So yeah, we'll round up in just a second here, but I want to end by looking at the longer range stuff here in terms of the upper level heights and see what the models are showing. So this is the upcoming 7 days of the ECM extended. So you can see here classic phase 4 in the 5 pattern at the moment here. We've got this all these negatives here up across the far north. We've got strong positives underneath. The jet is further north, so we've got a lot of that subtropical region affecting the majority of the mainland United States, also Europe, the majority of the UK and Ireland. We've got this deep trough, so this is a classic positive North Atlantic oscillation pattern at the moment. Now remember, MJO moving into the Pacific, what response does that have going forward? Now, according to the ECM extended, you see the high pressure building somewhat to the west of the UK and Ireland. But look at this here. By the time we reach the 3rd through the 10th of November, we're turning the pattern around on its head. We're losing the deep negatives and we're seeing the positives return. So you can start to see as it builds further and further north, it doesn't guarantee cold in Western Europe, Eastern North America. So we need to be careful with that. But it's interesting nonetheless how it's showing that the heights rising up into Greenland and up into the Arctic region. So that is showing that the Arctic oscillation, North Atlantic oscillation going more towards negative. So what's the GFS ensemble saying? So we're very strongly positive. Look at this here. Look at how strongly positive it is. We go from deep negative to strong positive. And obviously that means we've got weak flow. We've got lots of blocking within the high latitudes. When it's negative, you have colder Arctic air getting driven in to the middle latitudes. So we've seen it in the UK and Ireland, Western Europe. We're seeing it over North America. But then as we start to see the heights coming down over the Arctic region, we're seeing heights coming up over the middle latitudes. We reverse the pattern on its head, and there's the response. Very strong positive. But look at this here. It's expected to go back towards neutral as we move towards the 1st of November. How much does it go below neutral? That's going to be the golden question here. So a big test coming up, a very interesting test coming up when it comes to the weather pattern, and we will see how it evolves as we go through the next couple of weeks. But I hope you can stay tuned here to the channel. I hope you're enjoying the content. Obviously, one of the goals here for myself is to look at the big picture, understanding why a certain pattern is doing what it's doing and how it can evolve and change. I'm always trying to learn. I'm always researching stuff. I'm always curious to understand more about what's going on. Don't necessarily claim to know it all by any stretch, but I'm always learning, and by learning, I'm trying to then share that information with yourself. So that is the whole reason behind the channel, is trying to understand the big picture and then putting a forecast out and testing it to see if the theory actually matches up with the reality here. So yeah, we will wait and see what happens. But a massive thank you to the moderators this afternoon, to Lindsay, Paul and Sing Splint, for moderating today's stream as always. We'll be back at 4 p.m, I believe, next Sunday, so stay tuned for that. Thanks to Turbo Stream, Hazel Kitching, massive thank you to SJM, J72, Mark Kinnish, Katrine, Inverness, Scotland, for tuning in, to David and Joyce Vogan down in Kirkintilloch. A massive thank you to everybody for taking the time out. Hope you've enjoyed today's live stream, looking at all global stories that are taking place at the moment. I've also seen tremendous flooding, by the way, down in Oman in the Middle East. I forgot to actually share that here, but David says mum experienced a flooded home back in Bestbrook in our first year of marriage. A burst pipe in the loft. Unfortunately, I was in hospital. So yeah, it must be very, very stressful to experience water in your home, especially when there's damage caused also. But I hope I've given everybody a shout out. Have I said thank you to Hazel? I'm not sure, but thanks to Hazel, Nathan and everybody else for tuning in to today's live stream. It's been another epic one. It's been another enjoyable one. The rain's starting to come on heavier. The wind's still not picking up, but we'll wait and see what happens. We've also got Gavin tuning in from Northamptonshire as well. Good afternoon to you, Gavin. I'm sure Gavin will be streaming live, probably, if I'm not mistaken, 6 p.m. as usual on his channel. Do check that out. And massive thank you to everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Stay safe. And I'll be back with a European outlook, as always, tomorrow afternoon. A full week of content coming up here on the channel, so stay tuned for that and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Bye-bye.